In a bustling garage nestled in the heart of New York City, a 20-year-old black mechanic is hard at work when a tattooed Hell's Angel, clad in a worn leather jacket, bursts in pleading for urgent repairs. His daughter is in the hospital after an accident, and he needs to reach her. While the rest of the shop turns their backs on him, the young mechanic steps in to help and gets fired by his manager. What he doesn't know? The biker is the CEO's brother. What happens next will shock everyone. Before we dive into this powerful story, let us know where you're watching from. We'd love to hear your thoughts. The morning rush in downtown Manhattan hummed like a finely tuned engine. Cars clogged the streets outside the auto garage on 54th and Lexington, horns blaring, and the low rumble of construction rising from nearby buildings. Inside the garage, fluorescent lights buzzed above rows of steel tool chests and cars suspended midair. The air was thick with the scent of gasoline, old tires, and burnt coffee. Mechanics moved slowly, exchanging crude jokes and sipping from oversized mugs. But not Malik. At just 20, Malik stood out, not only for his youth, but for his drive. He had deep brown skin, close-cropped hair, and arms honed by years of manual labor. Wearing a navy blue jumpsuit streaked with grease, his name embroidered on the chest, he worked like his life depended on it. Sweat beaded at his temples despite the morning chill. While others chatted or scrolled through their phones, Malik lay on his back beneath a 2022 Ford Explorer, silently repairing a bent axle. People noticed him, but never the way he deserved. "Hey, someone tell Junior to grab my wrench. Chop chop, rookie," barked one of the senior techs, tossing a greasy rag in Malik's direction. Another chimed in with a smirk. "Bet he's good with his hands." Comes from a long line of folks who did manual labor, if you know what I mean. Laughter echoed around the shop. Malik didn't flinch. He clenched his jaw, rolled out from under the vehicle, and silently walked to the tool wall. It wasn't the first jab. It wouldn't be the last. Every day, it was something. Comments about his skin, his age, where he came from. The manager never said much, unless Malik missed a deadline. Then he was quick to raise his voice and call him kid in front of customers. Still, Malik kept going. Not because he enjoyed the treatment, but because he had no choice. His mother worked night shifts at a nearby hospital. Bills didn't pay themselves. He had dreams, big ones. Maybe one day he'd open his own garage and hire guys like him. But dreams didn't matter here. Not when you were young, not when you were black. The garage ran on hierarchy and unspoken rules. And in that system, Malik was always on the bottom. Not for lack of skill, he was probably the best tech in the place. But every time he stepped up, someone stepped on him. And whenever he spoke up, he got a warning. So Malik worked, quietly, determinedly. "Watch, please. Just need a jump, or a quick fix. Whatever gets me moving." At the counter sat Kim, the receptionist, long acrylic nails clicking against her phone. As she typed, she didn't even glance up. "Take a seat," she said flatly. "Someone will get to you." "But I really can't wait," the biker began. "Sir, everyone here has somewhere to be," she snapped, not missing a beat. Behind him, two men in line rolled their eyes. "Should have called an Uber," one muttered. Another customer actually stood and headed for the door. "I don't feel safe with that guy around," he said under his breath. Look at him, covered in tattoos, pacing like a lunatic. The biker turned slightly, like he was just realizing that he wasn't being overlooked. He was being judged. Misread. Treated like a threat. He stepped back from the counter, rubbing a hand over his face, glancing toward the street as if trying to decide, should he run, shout, or just break down? He took a few steps toward the door, defeated. Fished his phone from his pocket to call a cab, when a voice cut through the thick tension. "Hey, wait up." The biker turned. Malik stood at the workbench, one hand gripping a water bottle, the other wiping grease from his palms with a rag. "What kind of bike?" he asked casually, like it was just another job. "Yamaha Cruiser. Something's off with the ignition. Won't crank. I left it right out front." "Cool. Mind if I take a look?" Malik didn't wait for a response. He started walking and handed over the water. "You look rough, man." The biker hesitated, blinked, then took the bottle. "Thanks. Yeah. My kid, she fell. Internal bleeding or something. They rushed her uptown. I'm just trying to get there." Malik crouched beside the bike, scanning it quickly. "I'll give it a shot. Could be something simple. You got 10 minutes? 10 minutes, the man repeated, barely whispering. "I'll take it." Behind them, a sarcastic voice rang out. "Look at Malik, playing Captain Save-A-Biker." Malik didn't respond, didn't even glance up. He just reached into his toolbox and got to work, methodical, focused. But his heart pounded, not from fear, but from the weight pressing on him from all sides. He knew exactly what was happening. The stares, the whispers, the way people kept their distance. It was all too familiar. He'd lived it his whole life, being followed in stores, asked if he really worked where he said he did. He wasn't helping this man because he pitied him. He was helping him because he understood him. But as Malik worked, the air grew heavier. The biker stood close, still watching, still panicked, still glancing over his shoulder like someone might throw him out at any second. The other mechanics had tuned them out, but you could feel the judgment. Malik shook his head. "Don't be. It's not your fault. They don't really see you. Or me." The biker hesitated, then extended his hand. Malik took it, brief, firm, meaningful. A silent exchange of understanding. And just like that, the man in the leather jacket turned and walked out the door. Malik was left standing alone. In a room full of people somehow, he was still invisible. The garage slipped back into its rhythm with eerie ease, like someone had tossed a stone into a pond, and the ripples had vanished too quickly. Malik didn't move right away. The sting of the manager's words still rang in his ears. Around him, the metallic clinks of tools and the hiss of compressed air resumed like nothing had happened. No one looked at him. No one said a word. No thanks. No acknowledgement. No defense. Just silence. An unspoken message echoed louder than anything said aloud. "You stepped out of line." He wiped his hands on his stained jumpsuit without thinking and wandered back to his workbench. Not like a man who'd just been fired, but like someone who still had things to finish. His tools were still there, spread across the bench. The Dodge he'd been working on still waited. But everything had changed. The moment had passed. The decision had been made. From behind him, one of the other techs muttered, just loud enough to carry, "All that for some lowlife in a biker vest? Wasn't worth it, man." Malik didn't reply. His hands remained steady, but inside his chest, something burned. Not regret. Never that. It was something deeper. The knowing. The truth he'd spent years trying to ignore. It didn't matter how long he stayed, how hard he worked, how much he tolerated. He would always be the first to go. Always the easiest one to blame. He had spent 2 years convincing himself that keeping his head down would earn him respect. But now he saw it clearly. Respect was never being offered. From the back office, Malik could hear Karen's voice. Sharp, clipped, arrogant, probably on the phone with corporate, maybe bragging about how he'd taken care of the situation. Malik could picture it all. The smug grin, the self-satisfied tone, the complete lack of awareness about what had really gone down. Still, Malik kept working, not from pride, but from reflex. One bolt, then another. His hands moved on muscle memory, but his mind wandered. He imagined the biker outside, fumbling with his phone, praying a cab would come. Imagined his daughter alone in a hospital room uptown, scared, in pain, every minute stretching unbearably long. That man had walked into a room full of people and been treated like a problem. Why? A jacket, tattoos, the wrong kind of panic. Malik had seen that look before, the one that said, "You don't belong here." He'd seen it when his mom was ignored in grocery store lines, when teachers dismissed him before he said a word, when cops slowed their patrol cars just because he was walking home at night. And now, it had happened again. Only this time, it wasn't Malik on the receiving end. It was someone else, someone who, on paper, should have had nothing in common with him. But in that moment, they were the same. "Yo." The voice came from the front desk. "Kim. You gonna stand there all day? Karen says you're out." Malik looked up. For a split second, he felt like speaking, like fighting, like tearing through the system with truth. But what would it change? Their minds were already made up. So he just nodded once, calm, controlled, then turned and headed to the back to collect his things. The locker room stank of old sweat and stale rubber. Malik opened his locker slowly. The hinges squealed like they hadn't seen oil in a decade. He tossed his gloves in, unzipped his jumpsuit halfway, took a long, steady breath. He wasn't angry, not the way they expected, not with rage, not with fists. It was something different, something clearer. Because in losing his job for doing the right thing, for helping someone who everyone else turned away from, he finally felt like himself, like he'd done something that mattered, even if no one else saw it. As he pulled on his hoodie and began packing up his tools, the door creaked open behind him. Jonas, one of the newer techs, barely a year in, quiet, barely said a word to anyone. "Hey," Jonas mumbled, stepping inside. "That was something, back there." Malik gave him a tired look, not sharp, just worn. "Yeah." Jonas scratched the back of his neck, unsure what to say next. "That guy did look sketchy," Jonas admitted, voice low. "But he was in a rush. Seemed real. Most of the guys here didn't even give him a second glance, just saying." Malik didn't answer. He shut his toolbox with a sharp click. "Yeah," he muttered. "That's the problem." He walked past Jonas without another word. His boots echoed down the hall, each step heavier than the last, like he wasn't just carrying a duffel of tools, but the weight of every time he'd been forced to choke down his pride. When he stepped back into the main bay, everything was exactly as he'd left it. Machines buzzing, voices laughing, oil streaking across the floor like veins in concrete. The world had moved on, like it had already decided he didn't belong. Karen stood by the counter, clipboard in hand, pretending not to notice him. But the tightness in her jaw betrayed her. Her eyes flicked up, just once. The look said, "Don't push it." Malik didn't. He walked to the front, pushed the door open, and stepped into the sharp cold of morning air. And there, standing at the curb, was the biker. Still there. Malik blinked. "Thought you'd be at the hospital by now." The man nodded. "I was. Just came back." He paused. "She's stable. We made it in time. Thanks to you." Malik studied him, unsure. So, why'd you come back? The biker's eyes were weary, but steady. Because I've been where you are, and nobody should have to pay that kind of price for doing the right thing. Malik didn't know what to say, so he said nothing. The biker reached out his hand again, firmer this time. Malik took it. Name's Rai. Malik. Rai gave a tired smile. Well, Malik, if you ever need a job, anything, find me. Then he turned and walked away, swallowed by the city's noise. Taxis, sirens, steel. Malik stood there, letting the air fill his lungs. He had no job, no plan. But something had shifted. For the first time in a long time, he hadn't just made it through the day. He'd chosen who he wanted to be, and that made all the difference. The next morning, the city rose the way it always did. Sirens bouncing off buildings, steam rising from manholes, impatient horns blaring like the whole world was late for something. Malik stood at the corner of 54th and Lexington, staring at the garage. Same glass, same concrete, same humming glow through the windows. Like nothing had happened. Like he hadn't been cut loose just 24 hours ago for helping a stranger. His duffel hung off his shoulder, heavy with wrenches, a torque gauge, and a socket set his uncle had given him when he first got hired. These tools had become extensions of his hands. He didn't even know why he'd come back. Maybe to get the rest of his stuff. Maybe to say goodbye. Maybe just to look at it one last time before moving on. He pushed the door open slowly, half expecting someone to shout at him. But the shop barely noticed. Kim was at the front desk, chewing gum obnoxiously between bursts of some loud phone conversation. The techs were at their stations, heads down. The same trash talk, the same engine hum, like nothing had ever shifted, like his voice had never risen, like his choice hadn't cost him everything. He moved through the shop like a ghost. No one looked up. The locker room was dim and cold, the same flickering overhead light buzzing like it always had. He crouched down and opened his locker. Inside, the rest of his tools were lined up exactly where he'd left them. Nestled in foam trays he had custom cut himself. He ran his fingers across the cold steel edges. Each one held a memory. Tight corners, late-night repairs. That day he rebuilt an alternator from scratch because the new part hadn't come in. He started packing slowly. Outside the door, someone laughed. Another voice chimed in, saying something about new rules and cleaning up the place. Malik tensed. He knew what they were really talking about. Not oil spills. Him. He zipped up the bag and sat down on the bench for a minute longer than necessary. It hit harder in this quiet space. This place hadn't just been a job. It had been a shot at something solid, something real, stability, respect, a future. Now it was gone, because he hadn't stayed silent, because he'd helped someone who didn't look right. And yet, he didn't regret it. What he felt was deeper, raw, unshakable. The door creaked. Footsteps entered. He didn't look up. You here to stir up more drama? Karen. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was smug, almost cautious. Malik stood, slung the duffel over his shoulder. Just picking up my things. Right. She crossed her arms. You could have had a future here, kid. Solid work. All you had to do was follow protocol. She tilted her head. You think acting like some social justice hero earns you something? I wasn't trying to be a hero, Malik said, his tone calm but firm with conviction underneath. I was just trying to be human. Reynolds let out a dry scoff. You millennials think respect is handed out like Halloween candy. Newsflash, nobody gives a damn how big your heart is if you can't follow orders. I've followed every order for 2 years. Malik stepped forward. I worked harder than anyone in this place. I stayed quiet. I took the jokes. And still, you all treated me like I was disposable." Karen opened her mouth, but Malik walked right past her. He wasn't sticking around for another argument. There was nothing left to say. Back on the shop floor, a few heads turned, just for a moment. Enough to register that he was there. Or maybe that he was about to be gone. Kim glanced up from behind the counter. "You forget something?" "No," Malik replied, adjusting the duffel strap on his shoulder. "Just needed to see it one last time." The bell above the door jingled softly as he stepped into the brisk morning air. The city moved around him, unbothered and unchanged. People clutching coffee cups, barking into phones, charging through the day as if time owed them something. Malik walked with no real destination, past construction sites, delis, dry cleaners, past the same street corners where he and his mom once waited when she started working night shifts and he was still in high school, too scared to sleep until she got home. Eventually, his feet brought him to a bench across from the hospital, the one Ray had mentioned. He didn't know why. Maybe to make sure the guy had made it. Maybe he needed proof that yesterday actually happened. Something real to ground it all. He sat, elbows on knees, watching taxis unload passengers, watching doctors in scrubs chugging energy drinks, watching nervous parents carry bags. And fear. His phone buzzed in his pocket. A message from Jonas. "They moved someone else into your bay. Just so you know." Malik didn't reply. He turned off the phone and slid it back into his pocket. Leaning back, letting the cold sun warm his face, he took a breath. The air bit harder than he liked, but for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel small. He felt free, unanchored. It was scary, but it was honest. And somewhere inside, something stirred. A quiet pride because, in a world that often rewarded cruelty, Malik had chosen compassion. And even if no one had clapped for it, even if it cost him his paycheck, his stability, his daily rhythm, he had done what he knew was right. That had to mean something. Maybe not to the world, but to him. And for now, that was enough. By late afternoon, Malik had made peace with the fact that this chapter of his life was closed. He didn't find answers on that park bench, but something in him had settled. A sense of relief, maybe. He hadn't just walked out of that garage. He'd walked away from a version of himself that had been trying too hard to belong to a space that never welcomed him in the first place. Still, endings come heavy. As he walked home with his duffel tugging at his shoulder, his mind circled the same questions. What now? Where do I go next? Who's going to take a chance on a 20-year-old black mechanic who got fired for standing up? His apartment in Harlem, a creaky 5-story walk-up with peeling paint, offered little comfort. He expected to spend the night scrolling job boards, reheating leftovers, talking with his mom. But taped to his door was a note. His name, scrawled in black marker. The handwriting was fast but legible. Come back to the shop. Now, CEO. Malik stared at it, half thinking it was a joke. But it didn't feel like a prank. No one at the garage had handwriting like that. And his neighbors definitely wouldn't bother. His gut twisted with something between curiosity and anxiety. He hesitated only long enough to change his shirt, grabbed his keys, and headed back out, his heart pounding with something dangerously close to hope. By the time he returned, the sun had sunk behind the skyline. The garage looked unchanged from the outside. But inside something was different. Lights were brighter. The room was tenser. The usual noise of chatter and laughter was gone. Mechanics stood in clusters near the hallway, whispering, eyes shifting nervously. Before Malik could speak, the double doors to the conference room swung open. "Malik Brown, come in." It was Mr. Ellison, the CEO. Malik had seen him before, twice at a distance, always in polished shoes, tailored slacks, and an aura of quiet power. But today, he was in jeans, sleeves rolled, face drawn like he hadn't slept. Inside the room, Malik noticed Ray. The biker stood at the far end of the table, leather jacket draped over a chair, arms crossed, unreadable expression. But he nodded, a silent, "You're good. I got you." Ellison gestured. "Take a seat." Malik sat cautiously. Didn't expect to be back. Ellison leaned forward, hands clasped. "Yesterday, a man walked into one of my shops. Most of my staff treated him like a threat, judged him by how he looked instead of why he was there. He asked for help and got ignored. Worse, dismissed." Ray spoke now, voice low but clear. "Except by him." He nodded toward Malik. "My family." Malik blinked. "Wait, what?" Ellison nodded. "You were the only one who treated him like a human being. Because of you, he made it to the hospital in time to see his daughter after surgery. You didn't just fix a bike. You gave a father a chance to be there when it mattered." Malik's throat tightened. He shifted in his seat, overwhelmed. "I wasn't trying to make a point," he said. "He needed help. I helped. And no one else even looked at me," Ray added. "I've seen that before, lived it. People don't expect kindness from someone who looks like me. But you didn't hesitate. You just did the right thing." A beat of silence passed. Ellison spoke again. "Ray isn't just my brother. He helped me build this company back when it was just two guys.